it's usually our intention is make it very specific, make the verb positive, be healed of. Don't be afraid to say things like cancer. If you want to be healed of cancer, tell the universe what you want. A lot of people say, oh, you can't mention it or it'll get worse. Not true. The universe is not stupid. And if you say I want to be healed of something, they get the point. You don't have to watch what you're saying. So there's that. You should be positive about whatever you want. You need to be specific about whatever you want. And that includes whether you're looking for a relationship, health, finances, life purpose. All of it needs to be as specific as you can make it.
Welcome to the Angels and Awakening podcast, where we connect you with your angels, loved ones, and soul self. I'm your host and author, Julie Jancius. My journey began when I started hearing my late father before I knew he'd passed. Through my readings, membership, and Angel Reiki School, I help you awaken, heal, and master your unique spiritual gifts. If you feel called to work with me, it's your angels guiding you to discover your soul's highest purpose. Details at theangelmedium.com. Thank you, Earth Angels, for the 5-star reviews. You're entered into a drawing to win a free session. Now let's see what messages your angels have for you today. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the Angels and Awakening podcast. And friends, today we have the one and only Lynne McTaggart. She is a world-renowned expert in intention and energy, and I feel like consciousness as well. So Lynne, I'm so excited to have you here today. Thank you for taking this time to be with us.
I'm delighted to be here, Julie. Thank you.
When we start with intention, what got you interested in intention? Because I know that you have this journalistic background and you're more, I would say, like a practical person. You see things through the eyes of like science and what makes sense and how does this logically work. But you kind of came into intention in a cool way. And I'd love for the audience to hear that.
I'm not such a practical person. I do like delving deeply into research, but I started out life as a journalist and investigative reporter. My first big story was busting international baby selling rings, pretending to be an unwed mother. So this was when I was in my 20s, and with hidden tape recorders, we had them at the time, and hidden cameras and all that kind of undercover stuff. That journalistic background never left me. But I was always interested in the big questions about consciousness. I was interested in esoteric learnings. I have that side of me too. When I moved to the UK after researching a book here, I fell in love with the UK, then fell in love, stayed, and we started, my husband and I, who's also a journalist, a magazine called What Doctors Don't Tell You, which looked at what works and what doesn't work in conventional and alternative medicine. I was very interested in alternative medicine, including energy medicine. And in the course of looking at research for all of that, I kept coming up with and finding good studies of spiritual healing, showing that this stuff works. And so the journalist in me said, wait a minute, if we're talking about somebody sending a thought or sending energy to someone else and that healing them, this in itself undermines everything we think about how the world works. So I set out to find out why without really having a compass. This was a journey completely without a compass. I started speaking to a lot of frontier scientists in quantum physics, in biology, etc. And each of them had discovered a tiny piece of what compounded into a completely new science, a new view of the world. Writing that book, which became The Field, really changed the messenger. If I needed more changing, that was certainly it. because I recognize that the scientific story we've been told about who we are and how the universe works is completely wrong. Since that time, every time I've had unfinished business, I've wanted to look into it further. And the big unfinished business with the field was that thoughts are things that affect other things. So I said, the journalist in me, how far can we take this? Are we talking about tiny little movements of a quantum particle, or are we talking about curing cancer with our thoughts? So that's why in 2007, I set up the intention experiment. And a year later, I started shrinking that down into power of 8 groups. With the intention experiment, it was inviting my readers around the world and working with one of a number of frontier scientists working in consciousness research to set up experiments where I would invite my readers from around the world, and there were loads of them because my book, The Field, was in 30 languages, to come onto my website or another platform every so often and send an intention to whatever target we had. And that kind of feeling of unfinished business, you would understand that as a former journalist, that you keep pulling at string to find out more and find out more. And that's what has really powered me.
I've heard you say waves carry information. The entire Library of Congress could fit onto a sugar cube, and waves go on for infinity. And so you think about that one sugar cube versus infinity, and that much information can fit into a sugar cube. How is that? How is it that so much information can come through? And I guess simultaneously, the angels have been kind of bringing through this thought of our eyes can only perceive so much, and they're only built to perceive so much, and there's so much else happening around us that we cannot see or perceive. But when we get into oneness, we can really start to perceive through these waves so much more information than's available to our basic senses.
Absolutely. Well, even thinking about us without being in an altered state of oneness, we are bombarded with so much information at every moment. But our eyes can only pick up a certain amount of that, a very small amount of that. I mean, there are billions of bits of information that are bombarding us from all sides. So we can't pick that up. But as you say, the field, that quantum field, I called it the field, scientists call it the 0 point field, which is a kind of ground state matrix of energy that is made up of all of the energy dances of all the subatomic particles in the world, including yours and mine. And what happens is there's a trading of energy going on all the time with all these little subatomic particles. Think of an endless game of subatomic tennis, with one exchange between subatomic particles, which only lasts for less than a blink of an eye. It's not a lot of energy, but when you factor all of the subatomic particles doing this energy dance, that creates this extraordinary bed of information. And there are 2 important points which you just mentioned. The first is that subatomic particles aren't just particles, they're actually waves. Vibrating packets of energy is a better way to put it than particles or waves, because particle, you think of a billiard ball. Waves go on to infinity, and they have a near infinite capacity to store information. When they bump into each other, they take on each other's information. And that's why entanglement occurs. When you do something to one of those subatomic particles and it's sitting in New York and the other one is sitting on Saturn, they will continue to influence each other for all time. So they're always connected. So here's the 2 takeaways that we're talking about. Number 1, we're all connected via this energy field. And we also have access to information in the furthest reaches of the cosmos because of our ability, essentially, to access information from the field. That Library of Congress that's sitting on every sugar cube of subatomic information.
That's incredible. And so, us as human beings, souls, we are always broadcasting different waves and different frequencies, like towers with our thoughts. And what you have found is that with intention, we can become really specific in what we're asking for. And I believe in your research, you found that being specific with intentions for the universe, God, universe, source has a different result, a different effect than being general. Can you explain that to everybody?
Sure. And this we discovered by doing intention experiments. I've done 41 to date, 41 where we've actually measured the outcome, many more when we've just got together. For instance, we did 3 experiments recently for Gaza and Israel, and we did one for uniting America to try to take down the tone of the presidential election just in August of 2024. And those are informal. I'm more interested in what's happening with the participants than the outcomes. But we've run 41 experiments to date, and we've found that of those 41, 37 have shown measurable, positive, mostly significant effects. Of the ones that haven't worked, it's either been, and there's only 4 of them, where the scientists have said, no, we got zero results, nil results. A couple of them had to do with the fact that we weren't very specific. So I have learned as we've gone along, working with different scientists, what works and what doesn't work. And that helped me formulate how to do intention. That plus studying the practices of a lot of intention masters, master healers, Buddhist monks, Qigong masters, and seeing what commonalities they all shared, because they have a lot of distinctive technical stuff, but they also have certain basic commonalities. And that's what I fused with science to create my program, which I call Powering Up, and the program I use for my master classes on intention and all the other ones. So what we discovered, both in our practice and both in looking and studying at all of this, is that the more specific you are, the better. It's a big urban myth. If you leave things a bit more general, then you won't limit the universe. But believe me, you won't limit the universe. And sometimes it needs an arrow pointing to what you want. So for instance, with the intention experiment, I usually specify, if we're trying to lower violence someplace, I specify how much to give the universe a guide. So for St. Louis, Missouri, we focused on a certain the most violent area, the most violent batch of neighborhoods in the country, in the US, are in St. Louis, Missouri, a place called Fairground. So we focused on Fairground, lowering violence by 10%. Actually, violence went down by 43% compared to all of the neighborhoods around it and St. Louis as a whole, where violence continued to go up. So that was a really distinctive and definitive study. And that, plus the experiences of my many thousands of students who have taken courses on intention from me, shows me that the more specific, when people just say, I want love in my life, that doesn't work as well as really being a lot more specific about it. Or I want to heal and be well. Doesn't work as well as saying, I'd like to, heal the pain in the big toe of my right foot, that kind of thing.
When you tune into this and in all your research and just your connection with consciousness, why do you think that is? Like, why do we have to be more specific? Why do specifics get better results?
Well, think of intention as a request to the universe, a very specific request. When we do prayer, essentially it's like a supplication. It's God, you decide, thy will be done. And we trust God is going to give us the best solution for whatever, for our lives. With intention, I've specifically made it secular because I want to invite everybody in. Everybody's welcome in my church, whether you are Protestant, Catholic, Jewish, Muslim, anything, you're invited. If you're a Republican or Democrat, you're invited. So I wanted it to be secular. And also I recognized what worked and what didn't by testing it. So why it works, I think you give the universe a very specific target to fix. And
Mhm.
I've found that it works always. And also it helps people clarify what they really want. Because
Mhm.
a lot of people will say they're dissatisfied with their lives and they say, I want to be rich. And they don't mean they want to be rich. They mean they don't want the job they're in at the moment, or they want more time for their children and grandchildren or hobbies or anything like that. They just don't want their current life. So, what I ask people to do is to get much more specific about what it is they want. Then they can clarify and do a really pure intention for it.
And let's talk about that. What is the difference between prayer and intention?
It is pretty much what I've just said. Prayer is a supplication, and intention is a request, but a very specific request. However, when I was trying to find an antecedent for my Power B groups, I started putting people into groups in 2008 and was stunned to see that people were healing all kinds of things in their lives, from potentially life-threatening illnesses like cancer to getting up out of their wheelchairs. I've had three of them do that. I've had people throw away their crutches. Extraordinary. A woman going blind now has 20/20 vision. A woman who had a genetic disease, liver disease, and was due for a liver transplant has a normal liver now. Another woman who is deaf from radiotherapy has her hearing back, as did another person, and many, many other things like this. So when I was starting to see all of this, I recognized there was something really powerful in a group, and I was trying to find an antecedent for it. And with a lot of indigenous practices, they do circles. There's nothing new with that. Prayer circles, nothing new. But they're always led by something or someone, and usually a shaman of some sort, a leader. Mine weren't. I had people do it in a group with themselves. They were all the leaders. They were all working at the same time. So I'm looking and looking. Somebody had to have thought of this before me. And there I saw in the Bible, to my astonishment, that in the act, there was a real mistranslation into English. English talked about how Jesus, the acts were all about Jesus' instructions to his apostles about how to set up the church. In many, many, I think there's about 15 instances of it in that one area of the Bible where he talks about pray together, and in English, it's been translated with one accord, which is a very anemic way of saying what the original Hellenic Greek was, which was homothumadon, which actually means passionately and with one voice. Think of a Beethoven symphony at the end. Think of the Ninth Symphony, and that's what you're talking about. And he said, you'll heal and you'll be healed, essentially. And I thought, wow, maybe that was the power of 12. Maybe that was what it was supposed to be. A group has a special power to do it. And I'm not saying that, we create Christ figures or I am anything like that, but the group itself, as I've watched again and again, has an extraordinary amplifying effect. And there are many reasons for that, I think.
Friends, here's a list of our free and paid upcoming events. Black Friday sales start now. You can join my membership or Angel Reiki School at the best price of the year, plus get special bonuses that are only available now. Join my live Deepening Your Connection with Your Loved Ones on the Other Side course starting December 1st. This is free for members with limited paid spots for non-members. Free workshop November 27th at 8 p.m. Central on how to hear your loved ones in heaven. And join our free prayer meeting right before that at 7 p.m. Central. Sign up for all of this and more at theangelmedium.com/events. Let's go into some of those reasons because some people feel like energy can't cross distances, but that's been proven that you could be in California sending energy to somebody in China and they receive that. And why is it too that, because I've seen this, we held a prayer group last night. We've been holding them the last couple of months, every once a month. And what the angels kept saying is that when you come and pray for another, you receive healing as a byproduct. It isn't the intention of the person to receive that healing for themselves, but automatically, when you're in service of others, that energy also cycles back to you and heals you as well.
Well, that is a very fundamental part of my work, altruism. And I discovered it just over time with the intention experiments. And first, to answer your first thing about can you do it at a distance? Absolutely. Number one, all of my intention experiments have involved people scattered around the globe. Some of them have been with audiences sitting in front of me. However, the target has been thousands of miles away. For instance, with a seed experiment that I did in 2007 with an audience in Sydney, Australia, the seeds were sitting in Tucson, Arizona. We were there in Sydney, Australia, 8,000 miles away. And we were looking at a photo of the seeds, not the thing itself. And yet we had an extraordinary effect. And that has happened over and over again. Also, with my Power of Eight groups, people meet mostly virtually with groups. So they're sending healing where they're all scattered anywhere in the globe, coming together on the internet, sending intention. So it's very clear to me, it's been demonstrated in so many of my experiments and also in thousands of Power of Eight groups, that we create a psychic internet that is as powerful as the internet itself. Now, altruism. I started seeing back in my first peace intention experiment for Sri Lanka that we had an extraordinary outcome. That was a 25-year war. And during our week of intention, the government won a number of decisive battles that turned around the entire course of the war. This war was just unwinnable. And suddenly the government took over the area that had been taken over by the rebels, the whole North. And within a few more months, that 25-year war was over. Now, we can't say for certain we did this, but I've had run about 12 intention experiments since, and there have been effects with every single one, peace intention experiments. However, what I also noticed that almost eclipsed that amazing result was the effect on the participants. They were writing me and saying, I've made up with my estranged partner or husband or children or parents. I'm getting along better with my coworkers and my boss. And about 50% every single time, because I surveyed them to find out what happened. About half say, I feel more love for everyone I come in contact with. And I see this over and over and over again, but I also see it in the Power of Eight groups, where it doesn't matter whether people are recipients or senders. They all seem to get healed. And many people, when they're stuck, I will turn to them and say, if they're taking a class from me, the intentions from the group aren't working. I'll tell them, get off of yourself. Start intending for someone else and see what happens. And one of the beauties of a Power of Eight group is you're intending for other people 7/8 of the time. It's very clear from the scientific evidence that altruism is like a bulletproof vest. When you do something for someone else, no matter how small, you live longer, happier, healthier lives. And the study that really spoke to me most about that was a study of two different kinds of people. They wanted to find out how their lifestyles affected their immune systems. So they looked at group one. These guys were living the dream, as we would put it. They had an amazing amount of money. They were going on lots of holidays. They ate the finest food. They were, as they called them, the pleasure seekers. They were having a great time. So they assumed their immune systems would be in good shape. Well, they weren't. They were terrible. They were essentially candidates for all of the major degenerative diseases, whether diabetes, Alzheimer's, cancer, the whole lot, heart attacks. These people were going to drop like flies, whereas the other people were less affluent, but they were living a life of service. These people had extraordinarily robust immune systems. These guys were going to live forever. So that spoke to me specifically about this and definitively. It was basically saying that altruism is really one of the key pieces in the human experience to keep us happy and healthy in every way.
When it comes to us as human beings, we have all of these thoughts every day. I've read 65 to 85,000 thoughts a day, and we don't ask for those thoughts. We're not thinking what thoughts we're going to have tomorrow. They just flow in. And yet, so many of those thoughts, we talk more negatively to ourselves than we would to a neighbor or to somebody close to us. What goes into crafting a thought with intention? What are the parts of that thought that you have to purposefully put together in order to reach the universe in a way that's going to trigger something that works?
Well, there are many. I always tell people our intention. Remember, I'm always working with groups. And while people can take all of my teachings and create individual intentions, and certainly group members do, I really recommend people do them in groups. It's usually our intention is make it very specific, make the verb positive, be healed of. Don't be afraid to say things like cancer. If you want to be healed of cancer, tell the universe what you want. A lot of people say, oh, you can't mention it or it'll get worse. Not true. The universe is not stupid. And if you say I want to be healed of something, they get the point. You don't have to watch what you're saying. So there's that. You should be positive about whatever you want. You need to be specific about whatever you want. And that includes whether you're looking for a relationship, health, finances, life purpose. All of it needs to be as specific as you can make it. So that's clear. One thing you said about the 60 to 80,000 word thoughts a day. Yes, we have them. And the problem is about 80% of them are negative. So one of the things I teach people is those are all intentions too. We always think, the universe is only going to hear my power thought. I'm going to put that power thought out in the morning, and that's the only thing the universe is going to hear. But all of those thoughts you have, all of those judgments you hold, does my butt look fat in this? It does. I hate my hair. I hate her hair. All of that stuff. That guy is really a jerk. All of the things we think about all the time, all day long, that flit in and out of our heads, all of that flotsam and jetsam, that becomes our life's intention. That compounds to our life's intention. So one of the things I help people do is to become much more conscious of what they're thinking most of the time, because you can control that. You can control that. It doesn't just go in and out of your head. You can make much more of a conscious decision to be more positive, more affirmative about your life. You can do simple things. Stop watching television. Stop watching the nightly news if you want to be a little more positive in your life. All kinds of things like that. But you can be much more intentional in every way.
I know that you talk about meditation brain waves being different from intentional brain waves. And I think that this is just so fascinating. It helps me to feel things differently. So, can you talk about this with the audience?
Sure. I decided I had an invitation to do a brainwave study on Power of Eight groups. The Life University, I was speaking there, and they were intrigued by the Power of Eight. And so they offered to put their neuroscience department at my disposal. So I thought, wow, this is great. And what we did is assembled a group of seven groups of Power of Eight groups. And we put an EEG cap on one member of the group. And we had the group send an intention to another party in the group who had some sort of health challenge. Usually it had to do with pain because these were young students. So maybe somebody with a pain or whatever. the scientists then measured their brainwaves. And we assumed, me and the lead scientist, Stephanie Sullivan, looked to the literature on meditation because we assumed the brainwave signatures would be the same. They weren't at all. They were shockingly different. With meditation, there's a slowing down of brainwaves, so there's more of there's an increase of certain brainwaves. There are more alpha waves, which are the slower brainwaves involved in light dreaming, just meditation, just quietly going within. Ours weren't like that at all. They were completely different. The parts of the brain were turning down, turning off essentially. So the parts of the brain back here, the parietal lobes that help us navigate through space, particularly the right parietal lobe that says, this is me, this is not me. Those were dialed way down. So were, and the temporal lobes too on the right, which do very much the same function. So was the right frontal lobe involved in worry, doubt, negativity. These were all dialed way down. So the brainwave signatures looked nothing like those of meditation. They looked almost identical to work done by Dr. Andrew Newberg of the University of Pennsylvania, who had done brainwave research on Sufi masters involved with chanting and Buddhist monks involved in ecstatic prayer. So our student volunteers were essentially experiencing a state of ecstatic oneness. But here's the interesting bit about it. It takes years to become a Buddhist monk. It takes many years of practice and also a lot of time in priming to be a Sufi master who gets involved in chanting. You need a lot of time to prime. Our students had never done even meditation before. I only always have people do Power of Eight groups, do intention together for 10 minutes, never more, because that's what worked with our intention experiments. And yet they were propelled into a state of oneness within a minute. And so the point here is just extraordinary in the sense that you don't need years of practice. You don't need hours of priming before you get into that state. A Power of Eight group and a common intention is a fast track to the miraculous.
Friends, I just want to thank you for sharing each episode with your friends. Because of you, we've hit nearly 10 million downloads a year. Wow. As a thank you and gift, please enjoy my free 31-day angel success formula at theangelmedium.com so you can start connecting with your angels today. And please share today's episode if you've enjoyed it and tag me at Angel Podcast. Now, when you say highly focused oneness and ecstatic oneness, when you've been in that, because I found the same with my clients, I teach them a oneness meditation and I teach them how to get into that energy. It's not meditation, it's just the energy, but it is also the energy of how I was connecting with my dad. I told you before how he passed and I was hearing him before I knew that he was gone. And I found that if you can get into this oneness energy, it's like you're in tune, going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, all of the waves of information. And what the angels say is that it doesn't matter where you go in life or what happens, you have access to all of the answers that you're ever going to need within yourself if you can get into that oneness. So I've been teaching people how to get into oneness since about 2016. And what I found is that it's a different experience for different people. Some people feel it very palpably within their being. For me, it almost feels like I'm not embodied by my physical body anymore. It's like my energy is flowing out with everything, and I'm just physically one with all that is. I can feel my crown open. I can feel this tingling energy, but not everybody experiences oneness that way. Some people don't feel anything at all within their physical body, and yet they're in that state. What have you found when it comes to oneness? And I guess, what does that ecstatic oneness mean to you?
Well, I've surveyed thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people over the years to find out how it was for them. And everybody does experience it differently. I have people uncontrollably crying. I have people talking about energy flowing up and down their hands. I have people feeling heat. I have people feeling like they're in the tractor beam of Star Trek, as one person put it. But there's so many different experiences. It's an out of body experience for many people. It's an out of ordinary waking consciousness experience. That's for me. I feel heat. I feel an extraordinary heat. I feel an extraordinary energy, almost like I'm plugged into an electric socket.
Yeah.
That's how I experience it. I feel very much like I'm in an altered state. So people experience it very differently. And as I say, people feel a sense of a kind of oneness or oceanic bliss in meditation, but it's very, very different. This to me feels you're right there, you're energized, but you're in a different state, in a different bodily state. And as I say, I hear all kinds of stories from the people that I survey. These are with the intention experiments, people who do the Power of Eight groups. As I say, many of them see angels, see light beings, have all of those kinds of otherworldly visions and experience all of that. The point is really this. We are part of the field. Lots of people say, how do I enter the field? And I always say, you're already there. You don't have to go through a door. You're already there. You're there and you're part of it. Your subatomic particles are part of this, what makes up the field. But we don't experience life like that. We experience life in a state of isolation, of singularity. You know, we feel like lonely little people in a lonely little planet, in a lonely little universe. And we don't, though, when we're in a Power of Eight group or doing an intention experiment. Any kind of group intention lifts us out of that, and we experience the state of oneness. We experience the field. And as you said, we have this extraordinary human capacity for far more than we've been told and far more we experience, because science tells us who we are, and from there we determine how to live. And the science has described a very bleak view of the human being and human experience as a state of singularity, of isolation, and individualism is applauded, particularly competitive individualism. But we're not that. We're so much grander than that. And we get to play with that and feel it and experience that in a Power of Eight group.
There are a lot of people within the spiritual community, I'm just going to say, that talk, I feel, too much about protection. They'll tell other folks, be careful of sending other people healing energy because you don't want to take on their stuff. And as I've delved into this work over the years, that has never been my experience. My experience is that the universe doesn't want you to take on other people's stuff, is never going to have, like, if you're praying for another person who has cancer or sending them the intention of they are healed, it doesn't mean that that person's cancer is going to seep into your being or your body, or that you take it on. And I think that this is a common misconception that really blocks a lot of people from going very deep within their own spirituality. Can you speak to this at all?
Absolutely. This is something really fundamental that I talk about in my classes. People do have this misunderstanding that, yeah, I need to protect myself. And the answer to that is lots of things. Number one, there have been studies looking at whether you could block intention, for instance. And by pretending, you are, or imagining you are surrounded by a moat or wall or whatever. And in one study it worked, in one study it didn't. So there's no conclusion there. But also, I have a more fundamental question. If we're all one, if we want to experience life as one, why are we blocking ourselves off from that oneness? Why? As you say, it's not contagious doing an intention for someone. What I do find occasionally, there are empathic people who will start doing a Power of Eight group. And maybe they're intending for someone with a pain in their leg, and they'll feel the pain for a little while. It never lasts, it's not serious, and it's not a disease. It doesn't cause a disease. But I've only seen that sometimes, very occasionally. And most of these groups of mine, when my master class, I am putting people in groups for a year. I teach people and then I put them in groups, and I'm monitoring them over time. I'm working with them over time. And I find very few will complain about that. It will be, one a year or something like that. And usually when they practice it, almost invariably, when they practice a little more, that'll just happen in the very beginning. When they practice it more, it doesn't happen. As you say, people's illnesses are, unless it's a virus, it's not contagious.
Absolutely. And I do understand empaths can take on different energies. I feel like as an empath, you can feel into different energies that are happening within the world. But I feel like those who put more focus on that allow it to bring them down, their energy, their vibration. Whereas if we shift our focus to we are one with all that is and the intention and getting specific with the intention, you immediately just shift into this highest vibration that is. And that's where spirit wants our energy at.
Absolutely. And I think it's a matter too of practice. And as you say, it's a matter of getting off that sense of fear. Let's look at why people get ill for 1 second. People get ill because of a physical, emotional, psychical, and spiritual situation. And they are unique to that person. They are often, there may be a trauma involved in it or whatever, but it's a unique set of circumstances that put them in that place. It's not catching.
Most people don't know what they want. And even more so, a lot of women, particularly in the United States, feel guilty when they have wants, needs, and desires. But what I know, I know, is we do have to get specific about what we want and allow ourselves to want, because I feel like that's an invitation from the divine to rise into what's possible for our soul in this lifetime. So that's one question. And then the other one is there any science on waking up and co creating with an intention for the day versus most people, I think, within humanity just wake up and see where the day is going to bring them? And to me, as I've been reading your work, it seems like a different way to be an emotional human being in this world. When you wake up and you let the day take you wherever it's going to take you, your emotions can just flow all over the board. But when you wake up and you co-create with the universe and you say, this is my specific intention for today, it feels like you're more sturdy emotionally as you flow through life.
I think there are those people who just feel like life is a boat, and I sit in the boat and I let the waves come and they come what may. And most people who talk about doing intention as I teach it talk about being able to navigate their way through life and to set an intention when they wake up. So I always talk about big and small intentions, and big intentions, and you can have loads of them. Big intentions are the big things you want to achieve in your life. And usually when I say to people, say in my master class, what do you want to achieve? It usually is my health, a new relationship, or fix the one I've got. It's finances, they're not quite enough, or a new career, or a third act or another act. I want a different life purpose. So, yes, I tell people to do all of the above. Do the big intentions, particularly with the Power of Eight group. Do the little intentions every day. Focus on them. I've got people who do them for everything, not just a parking space, but everything in the different areas of their life, and to take that at different times too. So I think life needs to be intentional. On the other hand, it is not your fault if you walk out of the door, as long as you're being careful, and you get run over by a truck. Life does happen. Crap happens to people. And here's the good bit about that. It's how you're intentional and how your response to that is intentional that makes all the difference. Bad things happen to all of us, but it's not the bad thing. It's our reaction to the bad thing that really makes a difference. And so you can be intentional even when bad things happen. On the other hand, this whole idea that you were talking about knowing what you want, particularly as a woman, you're right. Women are particularly bad. We're such carers for other people that we get to the point, well, oh, I don't even know. I hear I've got to 50 or 60 and I don't know what I want. Yes, it's really important to take some time defining that. Sometimes, one very good way of doing that is my dear friend Janet Atwood has a book called The Passion Test, where it's a very simple mechanism of determining what it is you want, of isolating down what you're really good at, what gives you joy. And for me, I also talk about your divine purpose, the thing that you were put on this earth to do. When you know that, that in itself acts like a bulletproof vest. And I teach people how to use that too. So it's really important not to just be buffeted, I think, by the world, but you can focus your whole life if you know your divine purpose. It doesn't have to be being president of the United States, by the way. It doesn't have to be being a prime minister or being any big person in the world. It can be making the perfect chocolate cake, but it is what you were put on this earth to do. And that, I think, is a really important question to ask and answer in your life.
Lynne, I could talk to you for forever. Thank you so much for being here. Tell everybody where they can find you, your website, Instagram, all that good stuff.
My website is lynnmctaggart.com. That's an E on the end of Lynn and an ART for McTaggart. And Julie, I want to just tell one thing too and give people a heads up on this. I'm so excited. A documentary of my work is just been finished by Gaia TV, and they're going to be launching it in late November, early December. And we're inviting everybody who views it to take part in the biggest intention experiment I've ever done. It'll be a worldwide intention experiment run February 1st. It's completely free to see both the documentary and to join the intention experiment. We're going to heal a part of the world that's suffering from a lot of violence. So make sure to put that on your calendar and join me on February 1st. It'll be live streamed as well as having a live audience.
And you said that's February 1st.
It is.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lynne.
Thank you. It's been really great to be here with you, Julie.
If you feel called to become a certified angel messenger, energy healer, and medium, join my Angel Reiki school to learn all three at once. I'll also give you my secret sauce for building a successful, sustainable spiritual business. We're in person November 2024 and April 2025, or start the Angel Reiki school online on the 1st of the month. For personal messages from your spirit team, book a one-on-one reading with me. New slots are released monthly via email. Join my membership to grow spiritually, heal deeply, and connect with your angels for daily guidance and support on your personal journey. Visit theangelmedium.com/contact if you'd like to chat about which program would be best for you. Now, take a deep breath, tune into the loving presence of your angels, and ask them, how would you have me be of service, experience joy, and open my heart to abundance today? And let them whisper answers to you all day long. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you back here Thursday with a brand new episode.